Hi, I'm Dr. Rene Hackney. Welcome to Week 3, Part 1 of 8 Weeks to Positive Discipline. In this segment, I'll be talking about giving children choices, challenges, and contribution to get behavior change started. These are the first active steps of discipline. We've already covered the foundation steps, the things to be thinking about on your way into a discipline exchange. Those foundation steps included I messages about parents' emotions, empathy about children's emotions, and positive intent, how parents think about children's behaviors. Those foundation steps are meant to calm the situation. They're meant to keep the communication open. Today, what we're talking about with these active steps are meant for behavior change. They're meant to get the good behavior started. I'm going to start by talking about giving the children choices. Choices in a discipline exchange, the idea is that you're offering two positive choices about how, when, or where they can do the behavior you want them to do. So as you're coming into this discipline exchange, you have to stop and think, what do I want them to do? Do I want them to get homework done? Do I want them to get their toys cleaned up? Do I want them to speak nicely to each other? And then you give them some flexibility, some choices about how, when, or where they can do that. Let's say I want my children to get started on homework. Choices about how. Do you want to start with reading or math? Choices about when. Do you want to work before snack or after? Choices about where. Do you want to work at the kitchen table or your bedroom desk? Underlying all of those choices, we're doing homework. That's not a choice. The choices are the flexibility on the way into that behavior. These don't have to be important choices. I think about a child who has to take nasty medicine for a couple of nights. You might say, do you want it with the spoon or the dropper? Do you want it standing or sitting? It does not matter, but to the child who says standing, he's a little closer to that behavior. He just bought in by making the choice. You want to be sure when you're giving children choices that you're giving them two positives. There wasn't anything punitive in the things I just said. An example of that, my older daughter, Allison. She's one of those kids who's got music in her head, hums, whistles, sings all the time, a little bit of rocking if she can't be making the noise. When she was little, and it would be a Friday afternoon, and she'd be singing or whistling or humming, it might be a bit much, and I could say, okay, you can do that in here quiet or down the hall loud. I'm trying to give her two equally good choices. Choices wouldn't be, well, you can do that in here quiet or go to your room. That's a positive and a negative, and it's called a forced choice. You're forcing them to take the better. If you're going to send her to a room, the idea is that is a consequence. If you do not quiet down, I will send you to your room. Or if you do not quiet down, you will be in your room. So when there's a positive and a negative, that's a given, not a choice. Ideally, you're offering choices out of the moment as well. Do you want ham and cheese or peanut butter and jelly? Do you want to play blocks or balls? You're giving kids practice at making choices. These choices work especially well with the under 6-year-olds. They're being told when to go, where to go, how to go, and this gives them that flexibility. So many of them actually get a little excited about making some of those choices. I don't want parents to get stuck in choices. There's a few ways this happens. The first is the parent who will kind of wallow in choices. This is the parent who will say, okay, child, do you want this or that? And the child says no. And they say, oh, what about this or that? No? How about this or that? It's just fun to get a whole bunch of choices. The kids will keep you there for quite a while. And so the idea, if you offer a set of choices, is to stick with that first set. So you say to the child, do you want this or that? And the child says no. I'd say, oh, honey, this is your choice. Would you like this or that? If the child still says no, you can say, this is taking too long. If you don't choose, I will choose for you. When you say that, a lot of kids will choose, but some of them, my younger daughter included, would go, still no. So now I'm choosing this. She may scream for that, but the idea is you stick with this through the upset. If you can stick with that through the upset, when you've said, if you don't choose, I will choose for you, children learn to choose when that happens. And so you just want to rein that in a little bit. The other way parents get stuck is the child who will choose one and then scream for two. So let's say you've said to a child, do you want cereal or oatmeal? And they say cereal. And you say, okay, and you make the cereal and you go to put it down and they start wanting the oatmeal and complaining. If you make the oatmeal at that late stage, they're going to want the second thing almost every time. So you're going to have that back and forth. The idea is just to stick with that thing they chose several times in a row, and they'll learn that when they make the choice, they stick with. If I had a child who was doing that often, I would clarify with them up front. So I might say, do you want cereal or oatmeal? And they say cereal. And I would say, I heard you. You said cereal. I'm going to make it and we're going to stick with it. Do you understand? Because if they change their mind up front, that's fine. But it's that once you're following through, you just want to stick on that path. The idea in our sequence of skills, I messages, empathy, positive intent, choices, challenges, and contribution. The choices, challenges, and contribution are before consequence language for almost all behaviors. We're going to talk in week 4 about the only behaviors that go straight to consequence tend to be those aggressive behaviors. For everything else, you're going to want to try a choice or a challenge or a contribution. These 3 skills really are interchangeable. They work in the same way. They work as a distraction into the behavior. In general, it's a choice of 2 things. We're going to the playground. Do you want the red sweatshirt or the blue? At some point, probably around 4 years old in my house, children will say, what about the green? By all means, if green meets your goal, red sweatshirt, blue sweatshirt, green sweatshirt, I would say yes and why. Yes, it's another sweatshirt, it'll keep you warm. Sometimes the green doesn't work. A green party dress, muddy playground, and you would say, oh honey, I like the green too, but not today, we need a sweatshirt. If their third option, the third thing they want, meets your goal, it's fine to say yes and why. The reason we say yes and why and not just yes is because sometimes you're going to say no. And so it's letting them know that it's because it's meeting the condition. There are some ages where you can really use choices. Somewhere around 2.5, 3 years old, a lot of kids are driven to do things for themselves. I remember Claire saying all day long, I do it. For whatever it was. So give her those choices. Do you want to do it or do you want me to do it? Do you want to do it by yourself or with help? They're going to choose by myself, no help almost every time, but they're getting started on the behavior. Around 5 or 6 years old, most children want, say, over the schedule of the day, the order of things, the clothes they wear, the daily decisions. Giving them some of those choices, you may gain quite a bit of compliance. The books say somewhere around 8 or 9. I tend to think around 7. They want more physical independence, so many of them. They don't want to sit at your feet at their sibling soccer game. They want to sit with their friends. And so giving them some choices that give them some elbow room may be helpful. That's choices. If choices aren't working for you, or if you need to shake it up a little bit, challenges are just like choices. Challenges is making it a race or making it a game. If you wanted a child to start homework, you might see how many pages they can read in 10 minutes, or you might offer to do a spelling bee for their spelling words. It's taking the behavior and offering a challenge or a game. Choices, challenges, and contribution. So contribution, a whole other skill, works like choices, works like challenges in a discipline exchange. Contribution is giving kids a job, giving kids a task related to the behavior, something to get them through that behavior. This idea of contribution takes advantage of the idea that we all want to belong. We all want to be valued socially. It really encourages children to participate in daily life. What contribution is, giving them jobs. If you're making lunch, even a 2-year-old can take a drink order or can fold a napkin. If you're folding laundry, 3-year-olds can match socks. It's giving them little jobs throughout the day. In a discipline exchange, if you want your child to get started on homework, you might make them the task organizer. You want them to clean up the toys, you might make them the block supervisor or the baby doll dresser. The idea here is you're giving them a job related to that transition or related to that behavior. Giving kids jobs, it really gets the child more connected to the situation. I tend to think at our preschool, if there's teachers getting art supplies ready for the next day, there should be some kids helping get art supplies ready. They're a little more likely to participate the next day. They're a little more likely to want to be there the next day. It's this sense of community. We had a mom who said, I get it when it's blocks or balls, that's easy. Her example was, I've got an armful of baby carrier, an armful of groceries, it's snowing outside, and my 4-year-old lays on the edge of the sidewalk. She said there just aren't choices for this. Okay, this is when choices are designed for. Nobody's being aggressive, you don't need consequence language off the bat. And so choices for this child to get up and moving to the car, and you don't want lay here and freeze, that's a negative. 2 positives. Do you want to hop or skip to the car? Do you want to carry the ice cream or the cereal to the car? Do you want to listen to Barney or Elmo when we get in the car? Do you want to get in through the door or the hatchback? Those are all choices. They give the child some flexibility on the way in. Challenges. If it's safe, can you touch the car before I touch the car? That's a challenge. Contribution. I need a radio tuner. I need a seatbelt buckler. The idea of contribution is that you're giving them a job to get them into the task, to get them into the behavior. Choices, challenges, and contribution are meant to be more flexible and open than consequence language. So the idea is if these things work, you don't need the consequence. The parent practice items on your outline for choices, there's 2. If you have an outline, it's probably best to turn off the video now, go through those parent practice items and jot down a choice, a challenge, and a contribution, and then turn it back on, we'll go over those answers. So the first parent practice item, you've asked your child to pick up the playroom, there are toys everywhere, he just stands there looking at you. Choices, do you want to start with blocks or balls? Do you want to work by yourself or with help? Do you want the music on or not while we clean? Those are choices, and right, music, it doesn't really matter, but if they make the choice, they're into the behavior. Challenges, can you pick up 6 blocks at the same time? Contribution, I need a block supervisor, a baby doll dresser. These are the jobs and job titles. Parent practice item number 2, after bath, children are running wildly, you want them to get dressed and brush teeth. Choices. Do you want to get dressed first or brush teeth first? Do you want warm water or cold water? Do you want to get dressed on the bed or the floor? Challenges. Can you all get dressed before I get dressed? Contribution. I need a pajama picker. I need a toothpaste squeezer. Those are jobs to get them into the bedtime routine. The homework when you get to this in week 3 is just to add choices, challenges, and contribution to your discipline exchanges. Every time you come into a discipline exchange, for right now, be thinking I message, empathy, positive intent, choice, challenge, contribution. Try one of those. If you can't do all that language in the moment, I get it, it's becoming a bit much. Maybe think about it afterward. If you didn't come up with an I message in the moment, you started with empathy, think what would be an I message in that moment so that you're at least getting the practice and kind of thinking of things in order. In real life, you're not going to use all the steps most of it. I can't even remember a time I've ever used all those steps at one time. It's too much language. But it's picking and choosing between choices, challenges, and contribution. Thank you.